I'd like us all to take a moment to appreciate my Jamie Lloyd cosplay and my Jamie Lloyd set design. We're keeping everything extremely minimal, as he would have liked it. You know, he's not going to like those roses. In fact, you know what? He's going to hate all of this, so whatever. Yeah, the minimal background has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that I just moved house and all of my stuff is in storage. It's just a coincidence. So I paid £300 to see Tom Holland in Romeo and Juliet, and it was really bad. But at least I did it, and you don't have to, and I can just tell you all about it. But yeah, it was bad. It was bad. It was like one of those shows where when it ended, everyone was walking out of the theatre in kind of confused silence, looking at each other. You could hear people saying, "So what did you think?" Nobody really wanted to admit that it was the worst thing ever. But I'm so excited to share it with you guys because we have a lot to talk about. Okay, so let's start at the beginning because, you know, that's a very good place to start. So earlier this year, the Jamie Lloyd Theatre Company announces that its next big production is going to be Romeo and Juliet, starring none other than Tom Holland as Romeo. Obviously, everyone is very excited. I was very excited. I was excited for quite a few reasons. The first one being that I saw Jamie Lloyd's production of Cyrano de Bergerac starring James McAvoy, and you know what? It was extremely good. It was so good that all of these thoughts I'd had recently about how maybe theatre is kind of boring and bad were cured. I came away from it thinking, wow, you know what? Theatre is good and I want to see more of it. The second reason is that Romeo and Juliet is my favourite Shakespeare play. And a little bit of my personal lore is that I played Juliet when I was 13 years old in my school production. So the role is very special to me. And the third reason is that I'm a die-hard Spider-Man fan. So I actually have this art that my friend Laura did of me. That's me in the middle, and that's Spider-Man and Deadpool, and we're taking a selfie together. Just thought you might like to see it. Yeah, I'm like a big Spider-Man fan, and I don't know if you guys know this, like a little Hollywood secret, but Tom Holland actually plays Spider-Man in the MCU. So yeah, let's not sugarcoat it. I was being a cringy fangirl. I wanted to see Tom Holland. So this should have been the best thing in the world. To me, it's Romeo and Juliet, my favourite Shakespeare. It's Jamie Lloyd, who got me back into theatre, and it's Tom Holland, who is Spider-Man. So this is actually my first major gripe with this production. I'm going to say it. They knew exactly what they were doing when they cast Tom Holland in this production. We all know that when you cast big celebrities in movies, in theatre, you have a certain demographic in mind that you know is going to buy tickets. And Tom Holland, his fans are kind of like Taylor Swift fans, you know? They're going to find a way to get those tickets, even if they have to get blood on their hands. You know what I mean? So why then did this production feel like kind of a fuck you to all of the people in that demographic? I'm just saying. So let me explain. The first image we got was this picture of Tom Holland in this blood red poster. It's beautiful. He looks amazing. It's very exciting. It's very visceral. Everyone's sending it to their friends, their loved ones, and they're like, guys, have you seen this? We've got to get tickets. So let me tell you right now, even getting those tickets was obviously a huge ordeal. I signed up to pre-sale, which I've never done for anything in my life. And then you get an email that lets you join this pre-sale queue, which is like 3 hours before general. So I click the link and I get through, and there's 33,000 people in the queue in front of me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is a 3-month run in a small theatre in London, and 33,000 people is too many people. So obviously I knew immediately that there weren't enough tickets, and I'm just hoping for the best. Luckily my mum manages to get the ticket, and thank God she did, because when I got to the front of the queue, it said that the tickets had sold out. Yeah, it sold out in the pre-sale, as I knew it would. And I've never really been like a ticket buying, front of the line fangirl of anything. And I have a lot of respect now for the people that do this, like all of those Taylor Swift fans who found ways to get Eras Tour tickets. I have like a newfound appreciation of your art form because wow, these tickets were also not cheap because theatre tickets in London are simply not cheap. That being said, I do have to point out that the Jamie Lloyd Theatre Company have a whole thing about accessible tickets. Like I don't want to shit on him and act like he doesn't do this. So there's always tickets available that are cheaper if you work in like care or you come from a lower income family. They do make sure that everyone can get a ticket. But we all know that if you put Tom Holland in something, most of the audience is going to be the girlies, and the girlies are going to be paying the full price. Having been in the audience, I would say that most of the people there were youngish girls, probably around early to mid-20s. And I would say that most people around that age are either buying the ticket themselves, like they can afford it, or it's like a birthday, Christmas present combined situation. Some could easily have been 16, 17, 18, and that's obviously a lot of money for somebody around that age, or most people, in fact, because it's just expensive. So definitely most people in the audience did not fit into this category of being allowed to get cheap tickets. They would have been paying full price. And I'm sure that they knew that. Like, they definitely knew that when they cast Tom Holland. They knew exactly what they were doing. Obviously, I totally understand the argument that you need to look up the production that you're seeing before you go, understand what kind of vibe it is. But I've seen Jamie Lloyd productions before, and if any of these people had been to Serrano, they would have had an incredible time, and they would have come away from it being inspired and motivated to see more theatre. So if you know that this is your main demographic that's going to be coming to this show, why would you make it so inaccessible? Why would you do that? This production kind of felt like they had lined up all of these girlies. They were like, give me your money and have a miserable time. So obviously part of the problem is that my expectations were extremely high. But frankly, even if my expectations had been sort of middle, medium, or low, I still would have had a really bad time. So you're probably all wondering, what was so bad? What was so bad about it? Because everyone's been saying it's bad. I haven't really seen any good reviews. Even people on TikTok who went to it and didn't say anything bad, just from the vibes they're giving off where they're like, you'll have to see for yourself what you think. We're all kind of in agreement that it was not very good. So the very simple answer is that it was extremely boring. It was so dull. Oh my God, it was boring. It was boring, which is about the most diabolical thing a play can be. But there's one thing we really need to discuss: the conspiracy theory. The theory is that the play is not finished, that it was never finished. So some of you might have seen the gossip, which was like Tom Holland's Romeo and Juliet cancelled before the first show. That is not what happened. What happened was they cancelled all of the early screenings and the like reviewer previews. And you know what? Having seen the show, I'm subscribing to this theory. I'm not just subscribing to it, I'm a true believer. What I saw, there's just no way that was meant to be the finished product. They put on a play that was not done. It wasn't finished yet. And they charged me so much money for it. So my reason for believing this is that the first act could almost have been okay. It was the second act that really sort of held me at knife point and was like, you're going to sit through this and you're going to fucking stay awake. So the first act included some interesting stage direction. They did these bits where the lights would turn out and then it would come back on and characters would be like bloody messes. They did this stuff where you'd have characters on the stage, but then in the lobby they would be filming other characters. So you'd have like the live feed of what was happening in the lobby, and then you'd have the on-stage performance, but it was all happening simultaneously. They did a bunch of stuff where they'd have this sort of gauze-like metal sheet would come down so they could project images over the top of characters performing or behind while the characters were performing. It was very experimental. I wouldn't say a lot of it worked, but at least they were trying something. And Act 2 just like didn't really have any of this. It didn't have anything. It didn't have any stage direction at all. I would say about 90% of Act 2 was the actors just standing at microphones and saying their lines. It was kind of like witnessing a very bad audio play, because I also felt like the actors didn't have much direction. I'm sure if I asked them, hey, what were you doing in Act 2? They would be like, I don't know. I was just saying my lines. I wish this was an exaggeration. They really were just standing there with mics on stands, just saying lines. That was it. It was the kind of minimalism that made me think of that bit in Evangelion where they're in the lift and it's like 3 minutes of them in total silence in the lift, and it's supposed to be like some deep metaphor, but actually we know they were just running out of animation budget. Jamie, you're not going to convince me that this was some like deep theatre commentary you were trying to make. This was a mistake. This was not what we were supposed to see. And there was basically one beat throughout the entirety of Act 2, and that was just misery. It was just miserable. The characters were just playing miserable, and I felt really bad for them. I didn't feel like they were letting me down. I felt like they had been let down by the production. Because I mean, when you're doing Shakespeare, which is obviously extremely wordy, and you don't have any of the big exciting props, which is one of the reasons a lot of people like Shakespeare, is the fancy costumes and the makeup, you kind of need the actors to know exactly what they're doing to be able to deliver the lines in an exciting and stimulating way. You know, we didn't have any of that, and it ended up being fucking boring. It was just like something really funny about having all these really famous romantic lines that so many people know, but having them just sort of like mumbled into a microphone. And this guy, oh my God, what did he say? Love is a many splendid thing, not a mutter into a mic. Yeah, that's pretty much the problem. Okay, so my favorite thing about this whole production, and which is a true sign of just how terrible the whole thing was. Do you guys know how Romeo and Juliet ends? I assume you do. So obviously big spoilers for Romeo and Juliet. They both die at the end. Romeo thinks that Juliet is dead, so he kills himself. Then Juliet wakes up, sees that he's dead, and she kills herself. Then the narrator comes on and he says the final lines of the play, which are, never was there a tale of more woe than that of Juliet and her Romeo. So the way it ended in the Jamie Lloyd production is they died. And then the lights went out. Theatre went totally black and everyone starts clapping because they think it's over and they're relieved. But then the lights came on, like big blaring lights, back on, wake up. And I swear to God, you could hear people audibly groan. There was just this like wave of like, oh, throughout the theatre. People thought they were going to have to sit through even more. But luckily, it was just the narrator in those last lines. Hold on, wait, oh my God, there's literally a review I found which sums up exactly how I felt. We need more passion, more energy to make us not want the lovers to die. Right? Like, that's the thing. That's what was so funny about everyone being sad when the lights came back on and the play wasn't over. It's like we literally wanted them to die. We were desperate for this to be over. You should not want Romeo and Juliet to die if you're watching the play. That's kind of the opposite emotion. Also, just a bizarre idea to have it black out at that moment, because obviously everyone's going to think it's over. And again, just a sign that it wasn't finished, because they should have known that people would think that it was over. So I also want to talk a bit more about those lights. The more I think about it, I'm starting to believe that they added those lights because they were worried about the audience falling asleep. So it's very warm in the theatre, it's very dark, and this is a slog to get through, obviously. So they would just have these intermittent moments. You could never guess when they were going to come, where these huge floodlights would just blare on you and wake you up. I'm serious, wake you up is the best way to describe this, because people were falling asleep. It was kind of like the theatrical equivalent of a defibrillator. They were just trying to electrically charge the audience back to the waking world. I also have another conspiracy theory, which is that Jamie Lloyd watched Dune recently and basically thought, hey, that was cool. He decided he wanted to try and emulate it, I guess, because you know how Dune starts with that great bit where it's like, he who controls the spice controls the universe, and it's like, wow, 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 wow. Great. Okay, I'm going to try and do an impression of it. Oh, I'm doing impressions again. I need to set the scene. Big floodlights come on. There's one guy in the middle of the stage. He's just got a mic stand and a microphone, as is the Jamie Lloyd tradition. And he goes, cool, I guess. He never did it again. It was just this like first opening section. Like, I get it, Jamie Lloyd. Like, we all watched Dune. We all thought it was cool. There was just no rhyme or reason to it. It didn't really add anything to the production. I guess it was unexpected. And yeah, this is the common consensus of most of the people that saw this play, is that it was just very dull and unfinished and uninteresting and didn't really add anything to the canon of Romeo and Juliet production. Somebody on Twitter literally wrote, the Jamie Lloyd revival where Elphaba is the only one not wearing a black costume from the Uniqlo sample sale. We also have somebody said, we just left during the interval because it was that bad. I never left a show during interval before. Take it as you will. Can you imagine? Can you imagine paying that much money for tickets and then leaving during the interval? Girl, I wish I had left during the interval. But the thing is, I'm seeing a lot of people blaming the minimalism of how boring this is, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think Jamie Lloyd should be allowed that scapegoat, and I don't want us to fall into that trap. Because, you know, I've seen Jamie Lloyd productions, and it was minimalist, and it was fun, and I've seen other minimalist productions, which were also fun. We're not going to let him get away with this. My big worry is that people are going to come away from this being like, yeah, because minimalism sucks. No. This production of Romeo and Juliet sucks. Right, so I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Jamie Lloyd, and I don't want to like alienate you if you're not aware of him and the kind of stuff he makes. So I'm just going to briefly try and explain his whole deal. So he's a British-born director who's probably most known for adapting classic plays into this really stripped down style. There'll be no props, there'll be very minimal costume, think like Uniqlo basics, and there will usually be one major celebrity in the starring role. So we had Emilia Clarke in The Seagull, James McAvoy in Cyrano, and now we've got Tom Holland in Romeo and Juliet. And he's really carved out this very specific style to the point where people recognize it and people can make jokes about it. People can say stuff like, oh, I'm so sick of Jamie Lloyd's style. Like, the Jamie Lloyd style is shit. I hate it. And people will know exactly what they mean, which to me is kind of the marker of great success. You know, if people can make jokes about your specific style and recognize it so immediately, that's like you've done something. So everything I've just described is probably what most people would associate him with. And he's kind of like the Marmite of the theatre world. Like, some people really like it and some people really hate it, but I would say most people right now, not a fan. But people kind of wait with bated breath for like the next Jamie Lloyd Theatre Company production and who's going to be in it and what's it going to be. And I know I'm like going on about it, but the one production I saw before this was great. It was so good. He did like this amazing job of creating this really dynamic atmosphere and telling like an incredible story with just the absolute basics, just the performers and very little else. Seriously, Romeo and Juliet being so boring is unforgivable. There is no reason it should have been this bad. It's not the minimalism, it's just that it was shit. This production of Romeo and Juliet felt like Jamie Lloyd doing a parody of Jamie Lloyd. This would have been like if French and Saunders had done like a gag about Jamie Lloyd in their show back in the 90s. Right, okay, we're gonna get to the real juicy bit now, because I know you're all wondering, what was up with Tom Holland? Like, how was he? Was he good? Okay, I'm gonna preface this by saying Tom Holland was not bad. I think he did what he was told to do, and he did it very well. So the way they decided to play Romeo is that he was kind of a sniveling, whimpering mess. He enters the stage crying. He's got red-rimmed eyes. He's literally lovesick over Rosalind. It's like making him unwell. He's kind of pasty. It's giving people who search men whimpering on TikTok. And I would say a lot of the reviews are unfairly not getting that this is what they were going for. You know, a lot of girls are just like into that at the moment. I mean, we can see from the success of challenges, like little weedy mouse men. People are into that. But we are going to have to circle back around, guys, because the problem was this is the only beat. This is the only way he played that character, because I don't think they were given much other direction. He pretty much spends the entire performance crying and groveling, or like scream crying. You know, when you're like... He was either like... or he was like... Am I getting across what it was like? It was kind of like he did the whole thing as if his character was being stabbed in the kidney. And he was very good at that. But, you know, it would have been nice to have anything else. Some dynamics to the performance, perhaps, would have been super cool. So the rest of the cast, you know, again, don't think they were given much direction. Don't think they were told what to do. Tom and Francesca, who was playing Juliet, they had like some good chemistry. It was fine. Wasn't like earth shattering, but it was pretty good. And there was this one nice bit that I do want to point out where you see kind of from his point of view, because they have the camera pointed on her. We're going to get to that in a minute. And you see kind of through his eyes what he's seeing, and she just smiles. And I would say I did have this moment where I was like, yeah, okay, I can totally see how he's fallen in love with this woman from across the room. Like, it was very charming. And there was one genuinely standout thing, like the saving grace of the whole production. Maybe I would have walked out as well if not for Freema Agyeman. So Freema, thank God for you, she played the nurse, and she played her as this really kind of like raunchy mother hen figure. There was no mother character, so she sort of took the place, which again was like an odd choice. I don't know why they did that. I know there was a production recently where they switched all of the lines of Romeo's mum and dad, which I think is really clever. You know, that's like an interesting addition to the canon, you know, something that actually is interesting to see and does something different. But the whole Juliet's parents thing, by which I mean literally just her dad, it just wasn't working for me. I didn't really get what kind of relationship they had. I don't think Francesca knew how she was supposed to be feeling either. I don't think she was told. They'd never figured it out because the play wasn't finished. But I really can't fault any of the actors. I don't think any of them are responsible for why this play was so bad. I think they just wanted to try a lot of different stuff, some different angles for Romeo and Juliet, and by the time anyone realized that this wasn't working and it wasn't very good, they simply didn't have time. Like, they hadn't even finished Act 2 yet. They can't be going back and changing things in Act 1 and changing how characters are being played. The whole thing, just a disaster, essentially. All right, there's one more thing I want to talk about. This is really, the whole video has been building towards this. So, the cameras. Some people really did not like the use of cameras. I did not find it too egregious. Was it worth it? Should they do it again? No. So the way it worked is, you know, they'd have these live camera feeds. There'd be bits where they were following the actors backstage. And then you would see the cameramen on stage. They were almost like part of the scenery. They would be holding their huge fucking cameras. There was a whole bit where it's like Romeo on top of the theatre out in the rain, and they film a whole bit there. So I guess one of the main things that they wanted to do with these cameras is they wanted to be able to have like a live feed of a different area of the theatre while there was stuff going on stage. So most notably was the party scene at the beginning, you know, where Romeo and Juliet first meet. So they had Romeo on the stage, and then they had like a bunch of the Capulets were in the lobby, you know, literally where we'd just bought our sweets and where we'd just bought our programs. Like, we were just there. It wasn't that exciting. And suddenly it made sense. So when we arrived at the theatre and we're going to our seats, one of the attendants says to us, and they say to everybody going through, very seriously, I would almost say aggressively, you cannot leave your seat under any circumstances or you'll be watching the rest of the play through a video feed. They're dead serious. Do not go out of your seat for any reason. So I'm a little bit nervous because I have ulcerative colitis. It's never been a problem in any production before, but you know what? There's always the small possibility that I'm going to have a flare up and I'm going to shit myself in my seat if I can't get out of there. So I'm like, oh, it would be crazy if now was like the first time in my life that ever happened. Don't worry, guys. It was not. That's not what happened. That's not where the story's going. Don't worry. But I would say what happened was actually infinitely worse. So remember everything I said about the demographic? It's a lot of young girls. One of these young girls is sitting next to me. She can't have been more than like 20 years old. She was clearly very young. She's there with her mum. At one point, I even hear her mum ask her like, oh, are you excited to see Tom Holland? And I hear her reply, yeah, super excited. Very cute. And remember, guys, you can't leave your seat. Remember this? Because they're performing and you're going to get in trouble. They're going to tell you off. So we've got this very important thing that Jamie Lloyd's decided to do. He wants his actors in the lobby, so you're not allowed to leave your seat under any circumstances. Guys, this girl next to me, she starts having an asthma attack. To be more specific, she didn't have like a full-on asthma attack, but something serious was going on. I noticed at some point that she's kind of shaking. She's kind of... It's a very dusty theatre. It's very warm. It's not comfy. And she's sort of suppressing these coughs, I guess, because she knows, like, if she starts coughing, it's never going to stop. So she's doing this, like, She was okay, guys. I need to be really clear. She was totally fine. She reached into her bag. She must have puffed her inhaler, like, 10 times. And I don't know, guys. Like, maybe I'm the only one, but I feel like she probably should have been allowed to leave her seat. Like, what if she really had a full-on asthma attack and she was so freaked out about disturbing the essence of Jamie Lloyd's vision that she just, like, choked? I mean, obviously that would never have happened. I think what I'm trying to say is all of this camera stuff, it wasn't interesting enough for that situation to have had to occur. I just felt so unbelievably bad for her. The idea that she would have been sitting there knowing that if she did decide to excuse herself, she would have been forfeiting these extremely expensive tickets because, what was it? What do they say? You're going to be watching the rest of it on a screen. It's just kind of mean. Like, this production is already kind of dull and super expensive, and you're sitting in your seat and you're hot and it's dusty and now you can't stop coughing and you're not allowed to leave your seat or you're going to get in trouble. It's just not very fun, is it? And I guess that's really what this whole thing boils down to, is that this production felt like false advertising. Like, it felt like a trap. It just wasn't fun. And sure, I mean, theatre doesn't have to be fun, but if you're forking out a lot of money to go see Tom Holland in a Jamie Lloyd production in the West End, you kind of expect a level of brilliance. You expect a level of fun, I would say. I mean, you expect the show to feel finished at the very least. Anyway, 2 hours of my life I'm never going to get back, but at least I made a video about it. Great. Right. Love you all. Bye.